And these giant boxes were sitting at my door, and I literally brought those boxes inside my house, and I was just like crying. I was crying so hard because I was like, there's no way, this is thousands of dollars of stuff just from posting. And that was when I still had my corporate job. So that was a huge moment for me. I had never seen an artist on social media in kind of paralleling like an influencer before.
Mhm.
So I felt like this was all new to me.
Hello, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of Make Up Your Mind. I hope you're having a great Wednesday. I'm your host, Jahleane, and today we have another very special guest for you all. I have my very dear friend, Uma Leoni, here on the podcast. And if you haven't seen Uma on Art Talk or on TikTok or over the last years, I'm sure that you might recognize some of her work. Uma is a full time artist who's been able to leverage a lot of different mediums to find success as a full time artist and is successfully breaking the myth of being a starving artist. So I've known Uma for many, many years now. Seems like forever. But I'm so excited to have you on the podcast today and to talk a little bit about your journey.
Thanks. I'm so excited.
So let's dive right into it, Uma. Like you've had this amazing career journey that you've been able to, like I mentioned, create for yourself. Take us back. How did you first figure out you were interested in art? Did you major in art? Like what is your past and how did you get from where you were to now?
So I've always loved art. It's always been a part of my life since I was little. Even in like elementary school, art class was my favorite part of class. And then all the way up to high school, I took an art class as my elective, and it was just my favorite thing in the world. But there was no one around me that really told me art could be something taken seriously or as a profession. So art to me was always in the back of my head as something I enjoyed and didn't really think about too much. And then I explored it a little bit in college just as a hobby, nothing serious at all. I feel like a lot of people didn't even know that I had an artistic side back then. And when the pandemic hit, I really needed something to comfort me. And I feel like art was always there for me. And just eventually, times got rough. I lost a job a few years ago, and I just realized nothing's been working out. And the only thing that's been consistent is art. And so that's how I'm here today.
So you mentioned a little bit about how you dabbled into art early on. Can you talk a little bit about how you went from like not doing it at all to sort of just finding that as your creative passion? Like how did you even stumble into it and to a place that you started to take it seriously?
So I would say it was a hobby of mine. I considered it a hobby up until COVID. And I think everyone remembers that 2020 TikTok was blowing up. And honestly, a lot of my TikTok for you page back then was art because that's what I was looking up. And I was starting to get back into my own art journey just because of how difficult that time was. And so seeing these other people post their own art journeys, I was so intrigued by it and I really wanted to be a part of it. And back then I wasn't posting with the hopes or thoughts of this becoming a career. It was just something fun to do to pass the time because I had been posting on social media for a while, like in the beauty space, the hair space, the makeup space, all of that. So I kind of just transitioned my social media to be something I was more passionate about, which was art. And then it didn't transition into, an actual career until maybe 3 years later when I lost my corporate job. And, I had a choice of I can go find another corporate job or seeing how people are blowing up on social media and making a living from it, I can also pivot and take my social media more seriously.
So you mentioned that you were in the beauty space and that's what you how you originally started creating content. And as someone who's there next to you, you were pretty successful in the space. You were getting a lot of PR sent to you, you were starting to get paid brand collaborations. You also were putting your looks on TikTok and got recognized by people like Goldlink, you were in Cosmopolitan, you were on the Fenty Beauty site. Like a lot of girls dream about being big beauty creators. So, and especially having a successful creator career, which you always, I guess, were destined to have. So, what was it like? Why did you decide to go all in on art specifically rather than going down the beauty route?
I think it was just a feeling I had. I
Hmm.
think I do love beauty and makeup and hair and all of that. You know, I'm a very girly girl. I love to get dressed up. I love, expressing myself through those outlets. But I think art is something I'm truly passionate about. And I feel like I can truly express myself through art in my most authentic way. Whereas beauty and makeup feel more surface level. So, I mean, those were really fun and I was passionate about them, but I feel like if there was a channel I had to be my most authentic self, it was through art.
Yeah, definitely. And you mentioned a lot about authenticity and how you felt like, beauty and skincare and all that stuff was surface level to you. A lot of times people feel like that is the scariest thing, like showing up as your most authentic self, especially in putting yourself on platforms like TikTok, where the discoverability back in 2020 was huge, right? The biggest hindrance to people's success is a fear of failure and a fear of putting themselves out there wholeheartedly with things that they are passionate about. So, what was it like to you to make this transition and be like, no, my art style is completely different than anything that I see out here. This is who I am, and I'm going to put it out there because also to the audience, Uma's probably one of the most confident people I've ever met. And sometimes people have a hard time cultivating that. So, what was that journey and that process like for you?
So, authenticity for me and posting as my authentic self has always come really easy to me. And I think a big part of it is that showing up as your authentic self is a lot of work and it can be difficult at times, but I think it's a million more times difficult to show up as someone else and to like put on a mask and do all the research. Was this person doing? Was that person doing? How can I replicate this? How can I replicate that? Like, you're gonna burn out so quickly. Like, the stress of showing up as someone else is going to like kill you inside. It's not sustainable. So I just think at the end of the day, if you're going to choose a battle, I would rather work really hard in being myself, knowing that there's no burnout in that because I'm being who I am rather than trying to show up as someone else on social media because that's what you see everywhere else. I think it would work out. Like, I think you would gain the followers, gain the attention because you're following trends or copying someone else. I don't think you'll be able to sustain that growth or just posting. So basically in the long run, I think you would just burn out not
Yeah.
being authentic to yourself.
So it seems like you came to this realization at perfect divine timing, right? So you were coming to the end of being in a beauty space, transitioning into full time art, and right at the same time, TikTok is blowing up. So you were being successful in beauty, but TikTok brought it to a whole new level just with those timelines like intercepting. So can you talk to us a little bit about how your growth on TikTok happened? What was your strategy behind it? Of course, we know authenticity is a very big pillar, but how were you able to grow after making this big transition?
So in the beginning, when TikTok first blew up, I don't think anyone really had a strategy. I think the TikTok in 2020 is completely different from the TikTok there is now. I don't think people were posting trying to monetize anything. I think it was just a kind of relief for everyone in such a hard time. And so all of the videos I was seeing and all the videos I was making were so lighthearted and fun. Like, I remember my videos back then were almost all skits. Like I would find funny sounds. I would find funny sounds, but then flip them to show my art somehow. I was doing all of those really silly transition videos. I had no voiceovers. It was nothing really personal. It was just really lighthearted and fun. And I think that honestly was some of my most authentic content to this day. I don't really make content like that anymore, but I think that's why I was able to create such a following early on. And the platform wasn't as saturated back then, so I will say it was a little bit easier to get that following back then. But I think it was just the nature of my content being so fun that I was able to find people so easily. And honestly, I've been trying to get back to that lately because I feel like I've been overthinking my content a lot and just putting so much work into it when it could be so much easier. But yeah, it was really fun back in 2020.
Yeah. And so was there like a specific moment where things changed? Because you're in the process, you're having a lot of fun, you're in the flow of creativity. And that's when our best ideas and our best projects come about, like when you're having fun and you're in the flow of it. So was there a specific moment where you were like, shit, like this is a little bit different. Like this can actually change the course of how I'm viewing my life? Because if I'm remembering correctly, you were still working a corporate job at this time.
Hmm.
You were working in customer success, and Leone Studio had a foundation and you were starting to get built, but it wasn't necessarily what it is now. So was there a moment where exactly that changed for you?
There was two big moments where everything really felt solidified. I would say my very first I would say there's like three big moments.
Okay, let's walk us through them.
There's been like
We love it.
stages where I've gotten more confident with each of these moments. I've really realized this is something that I can continue to pursue forever. So I think the first big moment that meant so much to me was one of my first PR packages. I had received PR before when I was in the beauty space, but this one, it was a PR package from Cricket, and they sent me, it was literally these gigantic boxes at my front door, like huge boxes bigger than me. And when I tell you, there was enough stuff in these boxes to fill like an entire aisle at Michael's of like the Cricut aisle. So if you don't know what Cricut machines are, they basically, it's like a cut machine where you can cut out different stencils, and then there's different materials you can put like iron onto clothes, cut out materials for your art, and it's all really expensive. And these giant boxes were sitting at my door, and I literally brought those boxes inside my house, and I was just like crying. I was crying so hard because I was like, "There's no way. This is thousands of dollars of stuff just from posting." And that was when I still had my corporate job. So that was a huge moment for me. I had never seen an artist on social media in kind of paralleling like an influencer before.
Hmm.
So I felt like this was all new to me. So that was huge. And then I would say from that point on, I was starting to get a lot of brand collaboration. So I was making videos for them on social media. But then I got my biggest deal to date, which is my Mustang brand ambassadorship. That rewired my brain. That changed my whole brain chemistry. Like that was really crazy to me because that brand collaboration has nothing to do with art. That was just someone seeing my lifestyle as an artist and wanting to support it. So that was crazy. And then I would say the third moment is when I sold out my art shop. I had a drop for a limited edition print, and I had been posting on social media about it for like a month, and I didn't know if like my social media strategy was strong enough to sell out my drop. And I was really worried at this point in time that people were seeing me as like a social media artist rather than an actual like artist in real
Hmm.
life. And so being able to drop all of those videos and then the actual drop day coming and selling out, that was crazy to me. So there's been a lot of moments that just really solidified that this is a sustainable job. Like, this is real. This isn't, an era in my life. Like, this is here to stay.
First off, those are all very amazing things. And I'm sure like so many people want to replicate that kind of success. So, of course, like, yes, there are so many people posting on social media right now, but it's almost like how? Like, I remember in some of our conversations that we would have way back, you had mentioned that there wasn't really someone who was an art influencer in the way that you were. Of course, there were people who had these amazing deals with Nike. They had these amazing deals with, like Monster, I think you showed me once, or these big companies, but they weren't necessarily artists like yourself. So you essentially became the person that you wanted to see. But I think that a lot of people who might be trying to replicate your success are wondering, how do I even monetize this? Of course, there are brand deals that you can do, but how are you able to land these brand deals? What are your strategies? Are they coming to you? Do you go to them? Like, what does that look like?
So I would say I am very fortunate that I would say 95% of the deals I've come across have been sent my way. And I think that's because I'm really strategic with how I structure my videos. So I do have a lot of lifestyle videos that I like to post, but I think you really have to think about incorporating brands naturally into your videos. So, just being mindful, showing logos, showing labels, showing support for brands before they show it for you. I think it goes a long way, especially because you never know when a brand is looking. Like, I've posted a brand and just very lightly showed them in a video, tagged them in passing in like a lifestyle video, and months later they'll reach out to me. So I think it's really just being very mindful of how you structure your videos, the quality of them, and just showing that you can market brands in a very natural way. When they see that you're already used to it and you're able to do that, then I think they'll come to you.
So you're playing the long game when it comes to brand deals.
Yeah, I would say I'm playing the long game. Like, if there's a brand I want to work with, I will incorporate that brand into my videos very naturally. I'll flash a logo here and there. So for example, if there's a brand you want to work with and let's say it's like an athletic company, I would slowly start to incorporate that part of my lifestyle into my videos. So there's been times I've been like, well, I would love to work with like a company that sends me like workout clothes or something like that. I will incorporate very naturally me working out into my videos and just having that foundation ready. So if you do want to reach out to brands, they can see that you already do work that they're looking for, or they'll find you naturally.
You're creating your portfolio ahead of time.
Yes, I would say that's the biggest thing, especially because I've seen brands reach out to me almost a year later. Like, they are digging through videos. I think that a lot of people think that social media is oversaturated, and I don't think it is. I think there are people posting videos every single day, but a lot of these videos aren't the quality that brands are looking for, and they will dig to find, the people they want to work with who will deliver that quality work. So I think if you're putting the work in, just give it time. You never know when a brand could stumble across your work.
So it seems like the perfect formula is quality, authenticity, and playing the long game.
Yes,
Yeah.
that has worked great for me.
So, what does quality look like? Is it just having a clean camera? Is it having a nice background? What does quality content for an artist specifically look like, in your opinion? Because I know everything's going to be a little bit different for everyone.
Honestly, there was a time where I was really confused on how to shoot my content. And I would literally get on YouTube and watch videos like how to shoot cinematic footage. Even though obviously a TikTok isn't going to be cinematic. You can pull a lot of things from videos like that. I've learned so much about incorporating different angles into videos, how important that can be, the timing, like how long each clip is to keep people's attention in your video, the lighting, how many clips of your actual face should be in a video, how many clips of full body should be in a video. I think there's so much to learn from cinematographers that you can pull, even though you're using an iPhone. I've used my iPhone for everything. There's so much to learn from them. So I think quality is just being very mindful of your content and how you structure it. I think a lot of people just go throughout their day and like, oh, I'm going to film this, film that. But it's actually so much easier if you sit down, you think of your video beforehand. I'm going to shoot this at this angle, this at that angle, and you'll get it done so quick and it'll come out so much better than you just randomly recording different clips all day long.
Yeah. And, Uma, as someone who's been able to look behind the scenes and see your process, to everyone listening, it really is easy. I think for my own content creation journey, just observing Uma has been very interesting because we'll literally be doing something and she'll have something on the tripod and just move the tripod a couple different places, put the clips together, and it looks so much better than keeping something in one spot. So that's a masterclass that is a simple fix that anyone can really do. And so to go back to the story, you're able to accomplish all these amazing things. You're able to get these brand deals. You're able to figure out your process for what it looks like to create well and also make money and support yourself. So, what was the moment? Because we left off that you were in your corporate job. What was the moment you were like, okay, I'm not doing corporate anymore. I'm going to go to art full time. Did you quit? Like, what did that look like?
So that moment for me was 3 years ago. I was working my customer success job and I got let go, and it came out of nowhere. It literally one day they pulled me into a meeting and they were like, you can clock out for me. And I was like, oh, okay. And at that point I was on social media and I was posting my art. I was starting to build up momentum, but I was not in a space to be full time for art. So when I was let go, I really had to ask myself, do you want to go find another corporate job? Because I was so unhappy in that job. It was a remote job. I was sitting at home, mind you, sitting in my studio because my bedroom was my art studio, surrounded by my canvases, surrounded by my paint supplies. But all day I had to sit at my desk and work this corporate job. And it literally was killing me when I knew I could be working on my art, or I could be packing orders, or I could be recording content. And so working that tech job was really hard for me. So when I was let go, I really had to think, do I want to put myself through that again, or do I want to try as hard as I can to become an artist full time?
Once again, as someone who's there through this whole process, it's really interesting to have an outside view looking in because when we looked at Uma through the Zoom screens, because we worked at the same job, but when we always had the same resume, but like when when I looked at Uma through the screens, like her energy, it was just so obvious that she did not belong there to anyone who was watching. And I think it's also worth noting that maybe 2 weeks prior to this layoff, Uma had one of the biggest events that she had done to date with press in a nationwide campaign for their Black History Month. And what do you say? It was like 3 weeks later, you were laid off.
I think it was like 2 or 3 weeks later.
Yeah.
And I was like, you're gonna lay me off? Like I just had literally one of the biggest moments in my art career. This is crazy. Like to have so much success in one area of my life and then to literally lose my job, like those two ends of the spectrum was my brain couldn't comprehend. And I think that's really when I was like, what am I doing? Why am I doing this?
Thank God that transition happened because
Hmm.
it feels like it was in perfect timing, in absolute perfect timing. So you were balancing all of this art and creating content and learning how to be a traditional artist at the same time because let's be real, content is just marketing. You're an artist first and a content creator second. So you're learning the ins and outs of art. You're perfecting your craft, your technique. You're also becoming a content creator. I know that you had told me in the past that it had taken you years to perfect your camera techniques and also lighting and things like that, right? You're learning the technical aspects of it and you're working this corporate job. So you essentially have three jobs at once while being an active participant in your social life and other obligations that you might have. How do you balance being a full time creative while also being in a full time corporate job so that when the opportunity came, you were ready?
I'm not gonna lie, it was really, really hard because first, I'm not a morning person. So I know there's a lot of creators who will be like, okay, I woke up at 6 and then I batched content until 8 and then I got ready for work at 9. Like that, I was not a morning person. So I literally had from after work until bed to work on everything I needed to work on. And it was a sacrifice. It's not going to be easy doing both, but if you want something, you have to put the time in. And I think people are looking for, like the magic answer. How do you balance it? It's not going to be balanced. I didn't have a really big social life for a long time. Like, you have to work on both. But if you're working towards something that you really want, I feel like at the same time, it doesn't feel like a sacrifice. So I would be exhausted after work, not only because I was sitting, in one spot all day, but it was very mentally draining because I did not want to be there. So I would clock off and be exhausted. But I knew I had to put the work in, and it didn't feel like sacrifice because like I finally got to the part of the day that I got to do what I wanted to do. So, every day I was so excited to show up, so excited to get ready, get my tripod, collect my supplies, start painting. And I think it is really hard work, but if it's what you want, that's what you have to do at the end of the day.
Yeah. Yeah. You just got to make it work because the 9 to 5 pays the bills for right now.
Mhm.
It's a means to an end for sure. So if we take a little pivot right now, we talked a little bit about you being a full time artist, and we talked a little bit about you really diving into content creation. But can you walk us through like what it's been like to navigate the art world as someone who doesn't have any mentors, really, right?
No.
Okay. As someone who is completely 100% self taught, you didn't go to school for this, you do not have any mentors. Maybe you're going to YouTube University, but you are making it look good while you're doing it. So, what has it been like to navigate the art world and almost build the plane as you're flying it?
It has been very interesting because I honestly didn't even see not going to art school or not having mentors as a hindrance until other people brought it up to me.
Hmm.
Or I would talk to other artists and they would talk about this and that. And I realized I had no part in that conversation because I don't live the typical artist life where I didn't have the same journey to get to the same point as other artists. So it's been very interesting, very eye opening because the longer I'm in this journey, the more I'm surrounded by more established artists, and I'm realizing my journey is so different from theirs. And I don't think it's a bad thing, but one thing that's really interesting that I think I talked about earlier also is there's this idea of like a social media artist, an Instagram artist versus a fine artist. And so at this point in my journey, I'm really just navigating the differences between those and how to bridge the gap because I do want, later on in life to be considered a fine artist. And there's a lot of things that I want to accomplish that I just haven't done yet, which will come in time. So I'm working on them, like being in galleries, being in more group shows, more official shows. Like I've had a lot of, 2 night shows, but being able to be have my art up in places for longer periods of time, doing art residencies. So there's a lot that I have to learn, but honestly like I'm not worried about it. I've gotten to this point by myself And I know if I put the work in and I start building my connections, I'll be able to bridge that gap. But it's been a very, very interesting journey so far because I've had a
Yeah.
very atypical way of getting here.
Yeah. You essentially fast tracked your career by maybe 5, 7 years? I don't know, because
Very quick.
very quick. Because I do know that sometimes when I hear about Uma's shows, like, there are people who have just been in the game for a while, and she's definitely accelerated her career. And not even honestly, the work speaks for itself. It is there. And I know that every time, which is why you've been able to grow on social media so fast, when people see your art, they do stop and they're like, what is that? And I think that's just another testament to authenticity and really creating what you're meant to create. And so this brings me to another question. Has the freedom of being a full-time artist, has that had an impact on your creativity? Like, how have you seen your work change through having the space and the time to really immerse yourself in your creative ideas and also say goodbye to what you don't want to do?
I think my art has changed a lot. I think the evolution of my work, if I were to still have that 9 to 5, I don't think I would have gone to the point I'm at now for like another 10 years because it takes time for your work to evolve. Like you have to paint this, do this, like it's a slow evolution. And so being full time, I've been able to really find my personal style, which is really exciting. Just having literally all day to work on my craft is such a blessing. But also, I will say the fact that I'm dependent on my creativity for my finances has really hit my creativity hard because, you have creative like ebbs and flows, and sometimes you're not always in the mood, but you have to get the bills paid. So I think now that I'm full time, it is really great that I have all this free time, but I have to make sure that I don't burn myself out painting just because I need to pay a bill. So I'm still trying to find that balance, honestly.
Mhm. Yeah, I've heard from many artists that it is very difficult when it comes time to monetize your work, which is why people a lot of times people do hesitate to jump into their passions full time. And there is a whole movement around I'm not going to monetize my passions, but you've
Hmm.
definitely made it clear that it can work, and as you grow, there are things that you can say no to. So, when it comes to now monetizing your passion and being a full-time artist, how do you navigate the business side of things? Also, commissions, pricing your work. If people have pushed back on pricing your work, like, you're a full time businesswoman now, in addition to being an artist. So, what have you learned about the pricing and the monetization aspect of it now?
So it took me a while to really, I wouldn't even say I've mastered it still. I think I still have a lot to learn, but when it comes to the social media side of things, so pricing for videos and content, I actually took a course on that because I did not know what was going on. I didn't know how pricing worked, and I feel like no one wants to talk about it out in the open. It's not information that's just readily available. If you go on TikTok, how do you price? Do you charge for a video? How do you read a contract for all of these brand deals? Because these contracts are long. So when I got my first couple, I was so nervous, and honestly, I just signed them. I could have signed my life away without knowing it because
Girl,
all I want, like, you're gonna pay me for a video, sure. Like at the time, it sounded great. Yeah. And so there's just so much to learn. So I honestly was really overwhelmed in the beginning. So I took a course and I learned so much from that course. And I think a lot of people think those courses can be like scams, but it was so helpful. I would say if you're confused, find someone who has been in the game, maybe someone who works on the other side, like if they work in influencer marketing. Like lots of those people have courses. Find a course, figure out how to price yourself, know your worth. It's okay to pass up certain deals. And when it comes to the business side of my art, honestly, because I don't have a mentor, I was reaching out to other artists online. I was just asking them, "Hey, how would you price this?" And I was just comparing other people's answers because I didn't know how to price stuff. And for a while, I was selling paintings for way too cheap. And there are some paintings I wish I hadn't sold to this day. So for pricing my actual paintings, I was reaching out to other artists online because I truly had no idea how to price things. It's really difficult. And I feel like when you Google stuff, it's not really too accurate. And that also doesn't reflect the worth that you have in your personal work. I feel like everyone's pricing is very personal to them. Just finding different resources, connecting with different people. Art is a very personal thing. So there isn't an XYZ formula for everything. So it does take time, but it'll come to you.
Yeah, Uma, I think you represent like such a great point about presenting your work and what it's worth, and also showing that you can successfully monetize. But one thing that a lot of people struggle with is that they'll bring a product to market, they'll bring their artwork, they'll put out some kind of product, and people don't think it's worth that. People talk about this even with celebrities now, like, I'm not paying that, like, my your art isn't worth this much money. Have you ever had an experience like that, and how did you overcome it?
I have had a couple experiences. They're two very different experiences. So the first one I would say is when people come to me for commissions and they'll ask me, the pricing for this, and I'll tell them, and they'll be almost offended at the price I tell them. And I don't think they realize you're asking me to create a one of one piece of art. And it's not built into my art schedule. Like, I wouldn't have created this piece unless you had come to me. So taking time out of my schedule, to create this commission is very time consuming. It's a lot of work because we have to work together to make sure the piece is how you want it to be. It's not like I'm just creating the piece that I want. And I don't think people really realize the work that's put into commissions. So on that side of the spectrum, if you don't agree with my pricing, that's fine. I'm not negotiating that. I know my worth when it comes to my actual physical work. So that's something I do not budge on. And that's okay. Like, if I only have one commission a month or every couple months, that's fine with me because one of ones are literally that one of one. We're not, this is not for negotiation. But another thing that's happened is I created a product in bulk and I received so much backlash on the pricing of it. So I think when so many people are saying this pricing is just insane, you kind of have to step back and be like, okay, hold on. is and really take yourself out of the equation because I had to step back and really look at the product I was selling. It was a pair of jeans and I basically had printed some art onto them. But I didn't do it in the typical way. I didn't screen print them, which makes them way higher quality. I kind of cut some corners. It was the first time I had really made one of one clothing. And so when I took myself out of it and I took a step back, I was like, is this product actually worth the money I'm asking for? Or is my ego just getting in the way? Like, I made this, so y'all should pay this much. And so I did have to rethink that and just go back to a more simple equation of I paid this much for this product and I want to profit this much, so I'll price it this. Instead of I made this and it's so good, so y'all have to pay this much. So just taking a step back and knowing that it's not personal. People aren't attacking you because you're pricing something. They want to support you. Like, so you just have to know when to take it personal and when to not, and really be realistic. And whatever you decide on something, just stand on it.
Yeah, so it really sounds like you were able to develop your business acumen a lot more as you went along through trial and error, which a lot of times people are afraid to pivot into full time or just start that business because they're like, oh my God, what about all these mistakes I'm going to make? But it's almost through the mistakes that you're able to create a solid foundation that you now know forever. So I'm sure now, if you're going to give some advice to your past self, that's exactly what you would say. Or maybe you would share something around that. But to continue on this vein, I know we're wrapping up in a little bit, Ben. It's been amazing to talk to you. What are some pieces of advice that you would give to your past self or someone who's looking to pursue that quote unquote starving artist career that so many people say they'll be met with? Like, what's your advice to them? Because obviously that's not the case for you. So, what's your advice to them, and what advice would you give your past self who might have been scared to initially make that transition?
I would definitely tell myself that the time is going to pass anyway. It might take you 1 or 2 years to get through that trial phase where you're messing up everything, but that 1 to 2 years is going to pass anyway. So you might as well just start the journey now because you don't want to be 2 years down the line like, I wish I would have started back then. And then also, there's a lot of controversy, I feel like, around being a fine artist versus a social media artist. I think there's a stigma of fine artists don't use social media and fine artists are more mysterious and their online presence is more so on their websites through their online portfolios, and it's not making vlogs and it's not being more personal and open on social media. But social media has gained me so much. I would not be where I am today without it. And I think it's a tool that needs to be used. And I think you can be taken seriously as an artist and be in an influencer type of role. Or even if you don't want to be an influencer, just being online, posting yourself, it's okay. I think it's how you carry yourself that's the most important. So if you carry yourself with confidence and you go to these galleries, you ask to be a part of these shows, it doesn't matter what your social, like online presence looks like. And so just
Mhm.
breaking that stigma and showing up how you want to, I think you can do both. So use social media as much as you can, stay authentic to yourself in your journey, and know that your work and who you are will speak for itself. So at the end of the day, I just think that you can do both. You can show up online, be your authentic self, be personal with your audience, show what you want to show, and still be considered a professional in the fine art space. You can still participate in shows, reach out to galleries, work on your personal craft. It's not so black and white. You shouldn't be afraid to use social media. It's going to be your best friend.
This is very zillennial of you. Not necessarily just Gen Z, because people do say that Gen Z is impatient and Gen Z just goes and gets what they want, but also millennial because it's very girl boss, very girl boss of you. We love it. But honestly, it's true, right? If you want something nowadays, social media is your portfolio for getting there. There is no room not to be seen. And for you to make that distinction between, okay, this is the old wave or this is the traditional wave of art, but this is the new wave. And I'm going to go out here and get it for myself because this is my dream. And by any means possible or a vehicle that I know will get me faster, like kudos to you. And I think that's something that a lot of people listening would agree with. And so another last question for you is like through social media, you've been able to cultivate such an engaged audience, which I think is the number one thing that people have challenge with because you get brand deals when brands feel like your audience or like your platform deserves the ad space, right? They want people to convert into using their brand. But for people to convert to using their brand, they have to care about you. So this might be a loaded question, but how do you get people to care about you, in your opinion, when social media might be super difficult right now?
I think people engage with me so much because I show every side of my journey. And I think people are really appreciative of that fact because I will show when I had a drop. Let's say I'm dropping a new print, no one bought it. I will tell everyone, like, this was the worst drop I've ever had. or if I've had a creative block for the past 2 months, I will tell everyone like I haven't been able to paint anything for months. Like I will show them the ups and the downs. And I'm very personal with my audience. I also like to show a lot of different aspects of my life. So not only do I show them the art side, but I'll show them, things when it comes to my other hobbies, when it comes to my health journey. I'm just, I'm an open book with my audience and I like to engage with them. And it feels like a conversation when I'm on social media, like talking to my audience. It's not posting for the hell of it. It's because I want to update them on my life. And I feel like people respond really well to that.
So you show up like a real person. And it's sort of interesting because earlier in the conversation, you did talk a little bit about beauty and how that felt a little bit surface level for you. But it seems like through the through line of our conversation has been authenticity. And
Hmm.
beauty felt like surface level to you. But when you transitioned to art, it sounds like you stepped into the fullest version of yourself where you're able to share your experiences, your hopes, your dreams, your passions, your pitfalls, all of that with your audience. So
Hmm.
definitely a masterclass. And I had so much fun talking with you, Uma, as I always do, because
Yeah,
you're my best friend. But I'm so happy we had this conversation. Everyone I know probably got so much information from Uma about breaking the myth of the starving artist because that's just not what we're doing around here at all. So Uma, thank you for coming on the podcast, but this doesn't have to be the last time people interact with you or engage with you. I would love for you to share where people can keep up with you.
of course. So I would say my biggest platform is TikTok at Leoni Studio. You can also find me on Instagram. If you want to follow some of my more personal stuff, you can find me at Uma Leoni. I'm sharing everything and anything, so you can find me anywhere.
Amazing. If you're watching this on YouTube, it'll be in the caption. And if you're listening on Apple or Spotify, it will be in the show notes. But either way, thank you so much, Uma, for jumping on. And everyone, I will see you next Wednesday. Bye.
Bye.